Hello everybody, UB here, and today we're going to work on a sewing project because I feel like it's been a while since we sewed on the channel, and I'm just feeling the vibes. So let's get started. I love to collect things that are containers for other objects. Case in point, my mushroom jars, my treasure chests, my backpacks. Hello. Thankfully, it's not an expensive obsession by any means, but I do have a thing for bags, backpacks, containers. So I've been finding all of these leaf backpacks on Pinterest lately. Honestly, after the year of the mushroom in 2023, I think 2024 should be the year of the cottagecore leaves. It's just a pitch, but consider it. With that being said, this backpack is something that I've had for a few months now. I found it at a thrift shop, brand new, for $7, which is insane because it's all leather. It's a really good quality backpack, and I'm not getting rid of it by any means. But I do want to make a leaf backpack that has the same basic shape and function as this guy. I think it's gonna be a really simple project, which might be jinxing myself, but I think I have a good, clear understanding of how this backpack functions, and I ordered the hardware to be able to do all of these little snaps and all that good stuff. So I want to get started on the pattern, cutting everything out, the sewing, all of that good stuff, and I will endeavor to make the pattern available to print on my Patreon for free. All you have to do is search free on the UB Draws Patreon, and I've been starting to upload quite a few freebies, whether it's a pattern or a design or what have you, and it's free to everyone, not just my patrons. So why make a new backpack right now? We are going on a family trip, and I have to have a personal bag that is small enough to qualify to not be checked at the airport, so that's what this is basically going to be, but I would love to bring one that's a little more whimsical, a little more leafy if I can, and fingers crossed I can get it done in time. Once again, I made my pattern out of old scrap paper that I have in my workshop, and it's a little bit heavier, so this pattern should withstand a little bit of abuse. I basically made my measurements based off of that original backpack, and then made notes for myself as to what kinds of fabric I needed to cut each piece from, how many, and where my hardware was going to sit by the end. So I have fabrics that are more of the autumn style, the autumn color. You might recognize this upholstery fabric from my calcifer purse video. I have one group that is all greens and blues and that sort of thing, and that'll be more my summer bag. Do I already own too many bags? Yeah. Do I really enjoy having them? Also, yeah. So let's get started. I chose this fabric for my lining based off of the color scheme that I was working with, and I've had this fabric in my stash for a while. It's an old tablecloth of some sort that I got from a friend for free, and what I didn't realize until I opened this fabric up was that there were black little stains all over it. So I had to be very strategic on where I was cutting my pieces out from to avoid those black stains. Because of those stains, I almost didn't have enough fabric to do the lining, but it worked out really well, and I'm glad that I could give this fabric another life. I was also very careful in cutting out the fabric for the body of the backpack, which is the outside portion as opposed to the lining. And I wanted to waste as little as possible, but I also knew that I wanted to make this backpack have a little bit more of a maple leaf shape to it because it's very fall vibes. And so I hand drew a maple leaf sort of shape and then cut that out, and I'm really excited about how it turned out. All of this little cutting was definitely worth the effort. And then I moved on to cutting out the straps I was going to need to make the shoulder straps and the little hoops and that sort of thing for the hardware on the backpack so that I could wear it. This is where a little bit of sewing knowledge is really helpful, because what you can do to make two pieces that aren't long enough on their own come together is lay them on top of each other like I did here at a 90-degree angle, and then sew on a 45-degree angle. And they should come together really nicely like I showed, and then you can just cut off the excess. It's at this point in the day that I really started to feel tired. I had been dragging all day and trying to drink my tea and get some caffeine in me, but man, all of a sudden I just wanted to fall asleep on my sewing machine. And that's when I kind of knew that I wasn't feeling so hot. But with that being said, I was still able to push through and do all of the very long sewing lines that I needed to do to make the straps come together. Then I switched to my yellow thread, and I thought I was going to play with more oranges and reds by the end when I was doing my more decorative stitching, but I ended up very satisfied with the contrast between the yellow thread and the orange body, and it made me very happy. It gave me very, Halloween vibes. Good morning. It is day 2, and I woke up with a mild cold. Yesterday being tired makes a lot of sense now. I am gonna take it slow today, but there is a little bit of sewing I want to do just to keep myself sane. Last night on the couch, I got this guy turned inside out, so I've got a little bit to hand sew here, just didn't catch it right, on the sewing machine, and then I can do my finishing stitches on this guy. This is the shoulder straps. That needs to be done in black thread, so that'll be later today. I seam ripped this guy apart again. I think this lining fabric that I chose is just a little too slippery. We're gonna give this a try, whether it's today or tomorrow or another day. And I'm gonna try to get lining and body and that sort of thing put together because that's mindless and I don't have to think about it. So let's get started. What you can see here is while I was tackling putting the lining together, I was also putting together the pocket pieces. And these ended up being a little too big, so that'll be adjusted on the final pattern. And then I also tackled putting together some inside pockets that would go on the lining. Ideally, I would design this to be done while I'm sewing the lining together, but I didn't think about it until afterwards, so that's another update I'll have to add to the pattern. Basically, I'm creating 2 finished
rectangles, lining them on top of each other, and then this is basically creating 2 levels of pockets, one big one and one that is sectioned off into parts that can be used for pencils, pens, paintbrushes, all of the good stuff that I tend to run around with in my bags, and have just those smaller pockets available for the smaller items that might otherwise be jingling around in the bottom of a backpack. And then I appliqued that onto the actual lining of the bag. Next, I did a step that I should have saved for later when I had my hardware available, because I needed to loop a piece of hardware into those little loops that I'm basically putting into the body of the bag. But I just had to seam rip that out later, and it really wasn't a big deal. And now you can see me turning the body of the bag so that you guys can kind of see where those loops are included. And after that, I took the backpack straps and made sure that it was all centered so that everything was going to be the same length on each side. And then I just appliqued each side onto the body of the bag. This time I used a crisscross kind of X stitch to make sure that everything was going to stay in place, because I'd really hate to be doing a lot of repairs to this in the near future. Then I switched out my thread again into the yellow and started doing finishing stitches on my pocket pieces. I started with the body of the pockets because I really didn't have to keep these open in order to put in the hardware later. But I did have to do that with the flaps, otherwise there was going to be some ugliness involved. So, since I had the pocket bodies put together, I basically folded the body of the bag in half and then lined up where I wanted the base of those pockets to be, appliqued them on, folded them over, and pinned the sides where I wanted them to be and appliqued those on as well. But you can see I had a little bit of excess on the inside of each pocket, and that's another thing that I will be editing for the pattern that I put out for you guys.
All right, so it's day 3. You can probably still hear a little bit of something in my voice, but otherwise my energy is back and I'm feeling better, so yay! With that being said, this guy did not turn out so hot yesterday, so what I need to do today is figure out a backing fabric that goes with this that isn't gonna slip around like the last 3 attempts have. And then once I have that done, all of my pieces for the autumn leaf backpack are ready for hardware, but the hardware isn't supposed to get delivered until later today. What I'm thinking is after this is ready to go, I'm going to transition over to cutting out all of the pieces I need for the green version of this backpack. And then we'll see if I get around to doing some sewing on that one today before the hardware shows up.
Spoiler alert, I did not end up getting done with a green version of this backpack in time for our trip, but I will be sharing that eventually, so make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll definitely put out pictures of the green backpack when I finish it, if not a YouTube short. Now the goal was to do a finishing stitch around the very edge of this shape to make it lay nice and flat. And then I had to leave the top open in order to put the hardware in. Once I used a stiffer fabric, it really went very smoothly, and I didn't quite get the same shapes that I was hoping for, but it definitely came through once I put that finishing stitch on top. Next, I had my hardware come in, and so I just wanted to jump in and get one side of each magnetic snap on the body of the bag and the other side on each flap. Basically, these work like staples, so you have to make two little holes to put the posts through, and then you put the backing on and fold those posts inward, and that's what I used the hammer for, to make sure that they were nice and tight. Here's where I was reinstalling the loops on the back of the backpack to have the hardware on them, and now you can kind of see what I was talking about. Next, now that the hardware is on the flaps, I had to turn the raw edges inside of the pieces and do a finishing stitch across the top just to make everything look nice and tidy. And while I had the yellow thread in the machine, I did my decorative stitches on top here. I wanted to give each leaf its own little veins, and so I went back and forth in order to make a straight line down the middle of each, making sure not to go over the hardware that I installed because that would break the machine. Then I would go back and make little diagonal lines branching off of that center line. I definitely paid a lot of attention to the veins that I was putting on the top flap because I really wanted that to be the piece of this backpack that shined. With the flaps ready to go, I pinned them in their places and appliqued them to the body in their respective places. This is how the original backpack was designed, and so I wanted to just go with the same idea. It's important to do these steps before you install the lining, just because otherwise you're going to be sewing the lining and the body, and doing it this way just sort of hides some of those lines of stitching. Next, I do what I do with all of my backpacks, and I turn my lining inside out and put the body inside of the lining. I line up the top of each piece together and pin them, and then do a line of stitching all the way around, leaving about 2 inches of space so that I have a hole to put my hand in and turn the piece inside out. And then I went around another time with a decorative stitch to make sure that everything stays together. just another thing to do to increase the durability of the backpack. And then was the time to turn this guy inside out. It was a little tough with just a 2-inch hole at the top, so I'll probably suggest 3 inches when I do the pattern for this. But eventually I got her all turned inside out and then turned the lining inside of the body and got ready to do my finishing stitch across the top. As I went, I made this really easy on myself, and I just used that finishing stitch to turn the raw edges inside and get it all tucked in. But you could also whip stitch that opening closed. And the last piece of hardware to install were grommets. I never used grommets before, but it was really fun to just poke the holes where I knew they needed to go, and then hammer the 2 pieces together. This first grommet I did turned out a little less than fantastic because I did it backwards, so it was a little bit kludgy on the outside, but the rest of them I fixed that and did them the proper direction, so the pretty side is facing out. And then I installed the hardware on the straps of the backpack and braided myself a drawstring. I hope to upgrade this drawstring in the future, but this was a really great place to start. And voila! I hope you love this as much as I do. I think there's some things that can be improved upon, and I'll definitely be including those in my pattern. But for my first time making a backpack like this, I think it has just the right touch of whimsy.
Thank you so much for getting to the end of this video. Here's 1,000 experience points just for that. You're an absolute rock star. And if you'd like to join my Patreon, the link is down in the description. In the interest of getting the pattern out for this backpack, I decided to not put together the green backpack, but maybe there'll be a future video on that, or maybe I'll just make a YouTube short or something of that nature. Make sure to ring the notification bell so that you get notified when my spring-summer version of this backpack comes out. And as closing thoughts on this guy, I really enjoyed it. I feel like I really have a good sense of putting bags and stuff together now as a seamstress or whatever you want to call me. I feel very confident in that arena, and so when I need a project that is just kind of mindless and kind of easy to put together, sewing is definitely the thing that I turn to most. But next video we'll be back with a little bit more of a makery, whimsical sort of project. Regardless of when it comes out, I will see you in the next video. Don't forget to drink some water, and I will talk to you again soon. Peace!